Recording now, Chair.
Knock the camera off now. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is. Can you hear me?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. My name is Jim Higgins, and I'm chair of this panel this morning. To my left, there is only two of us in this room, is Mr. Richard Williams. He is the clerk. And my colleagues are Councillor Brian Strong and Councillor Richard Rhoden. And they're both on camera at the moment. Mr. Perks, yeah, you explained the fact that your wife is unfortunately not well enough to attend. You were an objector, I take it. Is that right?
I am, yes.
Yeah. And then Mr. Perks is an objector as well. Is that correct?
Sorry,
Sorry? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Mr. Logan is the applicant, and the officer in today was Linda Gorman, and then we have the Mr. Ben Davis, who is he's our legal officer as well. So good morning, everyone. Just a second. Oh, that's right. We're all here now. So I think we can start. It is time. Just gone a little bit gone time anyway. So my colleagues are Mr. Councillor Brian Strong and Councillor Richard Rhoden, as I said. Linda Gorman is an officer, as indeed is Ben Davis, and Mr. Richard Williams is taking all the minutes of the proceedings. So welcome everyone.
Okay, Chair, would you like me to
yes,
commence?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Linda Gorman could present the case for us.
Sorry, Chair, just before you do so, could I actually point out I have a declaration of interest under number 2.
Excuse me,
personal
Chair,
declaration.
Apologies, Chair. The first item is apologies for absence and then declarations of interest. So if you'd like to.
Yeah. Yeah, the first thing, I don't have a declaration of interest to make. Councillor Strong, do you have any declaration
no,
of interest?
No interest.
Okay, we noted what Councillor Richard Rhoden has said, and it's been noted. So I think we're ready to start.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Like I said, I'm Linda O'Gorman. I'm the Principal Licensing Officer for Monmouthshire County Council. Just a few points really, how the report will be presented. And the report is done by Taylor Watts, but I'll be presenting it today. Can you all clarify that you've all had a copy of the report prior to this meeting, and also that you've had the conduct of the hearing as well, so you can see the flow of how this meeting will take place. So if I can start with the applicant then, Mr. Logan, if you can confirm you've had sight of the report.
Yes, I can confirm that.
Yeah. And are you happy to continue, Mr. Logan, without any legal representation today?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And Mr. Perks, you're an objector, and have you had sight of the report and also the conduct of the hearing prior to today as well?
Yes, I can answer yes to all those questions.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. I will present the report, and what happens then, as you'll see on the conduct of the hearing, the applicant will then present their facts of what they want to do with the application itself, and also then the chair will invite other persons, which is yourself, Mr. Perks. One other thing I want to clarify before I start today, are you raising your objection today in your own right for you and your wife? You're not here authorised on behalf of the other objectors?
No, I have no authorisation to speak for anyone else, merely for myself and my wife. That's
great. I just wanted to confirm that with the members today to have a fair hearing today. So I'll highlight the facts of the report, and like I said, I'll hand it over then to the applicant and the objector. If there's anything you're unclear of when I'm going through the report, please feel free to stop me and I'll try and clarify any points that you need to sort of query. Okay. The reason why the premises licence has been brought today is due to objections that's been received. The application is for the club at White Cross Street in Monmouth. There is a current licence, a club premises certificate actually for this venue, and it's a bit of an anomaly. It's not a variation. I just want to make it clear to members to begin with. It's not a variation of the existing licence. It's actually a brand new application today, and the reason why that is the current licence held is a club premises certificate, which has restrictions to members being able to go into the premises itself. And the new application is for a premises license, which will actually allow for sort of free use really into that venue. So that's why it's regarded as a new application today. The key points then that's been requested is for indoor sporting events. If you refer to 3.1 of the report, is indoor sporting events between the hours of 800 to 0:30 hours Monday to Sunday, live music indoors, which is 0800 to 0:30 hours Monday to Sunday, recorded music indoors, which is 0800 to 0:30 hours Monday to Sunday, additional New Year's Eve of 0800 to 01:30 hours, supply of alcohol on and off sales, which is 0800 to 0:30 hours Monday to Sunday, additional hours then on New Year's Eve, which is 0800 to 01:30 hours, and then the hours open to the public, which is 0800 to 0100 hours Monday to Sunday, again with additional New Year's Eve of 0800 to 01:30 hours. So that was the basis of the new application. You will look at the application is actually attached to the report as Appendix A, and you will note the difference of times as opposed to the club premises certificate, which is attached as Appendix B to this report. So you can see what is actually being requested extra over and above the club premises certificate. And one point I will state is that it has been indicated, and Mr. Logan may want to clarify when it comes to his deliberation, that if there is granted today that the club will be premises certificate will be rescinded and it'll just be the premises license. If it isn't granted today, then the club premises certificate will remain in situ. So perhaps Mr. Logan then can sort of clarify that when is his time to speak. In the application that was submitted, what it related to was it's going to have CCTV, operate challenge 25, be a member of Pub Watch, have a compliant fire alarm and fire risk assessment, display notices for customers to leave quietly, not to have live music outdoors, not to have children at the premise from 9 p.m. onwards. So that's what was actually stipulated in the actual application itself. What is required then is that all statutory responsible authorities are consulted upon, and that was done. If you note 3.3 of the report, we actually consulted with Head Lugh Gwent Police, South Wales Fire Service, the local health board, immigration, and then members of Monmouthshire County Council, being it environmental health, social services, planning, licensing and trading standards. So all those were consulted on, and also what we need is required that is a notice displayed at the premises itself. A public notice is actually displayed there, as well as it being on the website of Monmouthshire County Council, is to give the opportunities of those who wish to make representation with regards to the change of the club itself. So that was actually duly carried out. There were no objections from the responsible authorities except for the police. And this is highlighted in 3.5 of the report. And if you note, it's actually strengthening the CCTV that was already on the club premises, because it was obviously making it more in depth of how a CCTV should be managed. And also there are elements of other conditions which requires to maintain an up-to-date register of refusals of alcohol, to maintain an up-to-date register of incident book, to conduct a challenge 25 policy. What that means is anybody who appears to be under the age of 25 will be challenged to see if they've actually are in fact over 18 and able to purchase alcohol. Then there's also fully documented staff volunteer training to include training on the premises license conditions of that premises and also the challenge 25 policy. that any bookings for private events, membership are to be retained in adherence with GDPR. That signs should be prominent at the exit of the premises, advising patrons to leave the premises quietly. The secretary shall be present at all functions at the premises. Where there is reasonable suspicion that drug misuse is happening at the premises, then there should be action taken, and also the SIA would have the powers to sort of search and keep an incident book of that as well. The secretary shall ensure that clear, visible notice be placed on the premises advising those attending that searches will be carried out. The secretary shall ensure that documented arrangements are in place at the premises to discourage the use of sale of controlled substances, again, and looking at checks in toilet areas throughout the nights where it's usually more prevalent. When necessary, the premises will continue with an iron track operation. What that is basically police carry out swabs to see if there's any traces of drugs at all at the premises. SIA staff will be employed appropriately on a risk assessment basis. The secretary shall provide the police with planned dates and times of employment of SIA staff. And also no drinks are to be taken outside the premises, and likewise the smoking outside area to be closely monitored regarding numbers and behaviour of patrons. The secretary shall ensure that the persons outside at any one time are not excessive in order to prevent antisocial behaviour and noise nuisance occurring. So those were the representations made by the police. What happened then, that was actually submitted back to the applicant. They then in turn agreed to having those extra conditions actually placed upon their licence if it is granted. And in 3.6 of the report, the objections that were relayed by members of the local residents is attached as Appendix C, and Mr. Perks is here today with regard to his representation. Appendix C is the representations made. That was like on noise pollution. So a quick summary in 3.6 of the report was noise pollution from recorded and live music, the late night hours applied for alcohol and music, noise from customers leaving the premises late at night, noise from the beer garden recently introduced at the premises already causing a disturbance, poor soundproofing from listed buildings with a singular pane glass, concerns for elderly residents, concerns over the potential rise in antisocial behaviour. One recent incident involving police attendants currently under investigation, and that may be raised in this meeting, and it is ongoing investigation by the police on that matter. It's they do feel, I've got a note here, so I think it's been relayed, so I'm just going to state that yes, they have a log of an assault at that premises. It was with family members. The club had working CCTV, which they provided to the police, and they cannot see an issue in the club's part itself in relation to that incident. So in case this is raised, just to give you an update of that, it is investigating the incident with those concerned. Concerns over transport to and from the venue itself. So those were the representation. With regards to the change in the application then from the applicant agreeing to the police objections, that was relayed back to the objectors to make it clear that there are extra conditions over and above the original applications that were submitted to see if they wanted to still pursue the objections, and 14 did come back saying they still wanted to pursue the objections that they had previously raised. Within the letter, you will see that letter that was actually passed to the objectors as Appendix E to the report, and it highlighted that if the license is granted, then the conditions would be strengthened, but obviously if it didn't, it would be reverted back to the club premises certificate conditions, which is what I've mentioned at the start of this hearing today, how it will be played if it isn't granted today. There were representations actually made with regards to house pricing and car parking issues, and those must be regarded as being irrelevant. If you're looking in more depth at the representations, which is attached as Appendix C to this report, we can only take into account the 4 licensing objectives, and that again was made clear in the letter to the objectors, be it the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. With regards to the report itself, we need to refer back to the legislation, which is the Licensing Act, also any guidance issued under that Licensing Act, our policy as well, and this is referred to though within the report under 3.10, where regards to responsible authorities, why they are consulted upon and they can determine what is appropriate grounds to object in their own right. And also highlighting that each responsible authority is an expert in their respective field. And in some cases, it is likely the particular responsible authority of the licensing authority's main source of advice. We have as well, even though there was no objection from Environmental Health, we have received a comment from Environmental Health, which is in 3.11. Environmental Health has not objected to this application. The area officer is aware that representations have been made against the application, including noise-related concerns, which is a lot of it, as you see in Appendix C of this report. The section has the responsibility for investigating complaints of noise nuisance on behalf of the Council, having regard to the statutory nuisance provisions of the Environmental Protection Act 1990. As such, if following the decision of the Licensing Committee, complaints regarding noise from the premises were received, these would be considered and investigated as appropriate. So that's the comment from Environmental Health Officer, and as I mentioned, we need to take advice on Home Office guidance under Section 182, which is within this report, also the Licensing Act itself, and also our policy, and that is in 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 and 4.4 of this report. And the policy, Monmouthshire County Council's policy, is also attached as Appendix F in relation to crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance and public safety, to give advice then of how this matter should be dealt with today. So that is the nature of the report. I'll hand you over then to the applicant then, Chair, who will make their submissions, and then members then consider questioning the applicant, and then obviously we'll go to Mr. Perks, who's kindly come along today with his regards to his objection, and then again likewise you'll be able to sort of question any elements of that as well. So I'll hand you over to Mr. Logan, please.
Yeah, before you do, just be aware, another council officer joined us now, is Wendy Barnard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Just for everyone to be aware. Right, thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning. Maybe it would be relevant for me to, or pertinent for me to, start with a little brief history of where we came from, what we were doing, and why we did what we did, and why we've applied for what we've applied for. Would that be okay?
Yes. If you
okay.
wish.
So prior to COVID, the Monmouth Conservative Club, as it was then known, was very close to closure due to a failing business model, basically. They have very few members here. Those members that were registered as members attended on an ad hoc basis. So essentially, financially, it wasn't viable to keep the place open. At that point, the then newly elected committee decided that they would give it one last chance and maybe renovate the place and do some much needed works around here. So we managed to raise a sum of money which enabled us to do that, and then COVID came along, which was kind of convenient for us to be able to do that, because we weren't actually losing any business while we were renovating the place. So the old place was very tired. It needed a new central heating system. It needed a complete new fire alarm system. Lots of fire eggs works were done around here. Basically, we spent about £165,000 on getting the club back up to something that we hoped would be enjoyable for existing members and new members. And it became apparent that we couldn't attract any new member applications because it was known as a closed shop whilst it was the Conservative Club, and the people who visited the club because they were of a political persuasion which was Conservative would still obviously come, but there were lots of people who wouldn't visit the club because of its then political persuasion. So we disassociated ourselves with the Conservative Party and renamed the premises the club, which the Conservative Party and the associations of Conservative clubs had no objection to. And we needed to obviously attract a greater number of new members so that the renovations and the new business model would actually work. And in order to do that, we had to attract more people to come in to see the work that we'd done and how different it was and how different the atmosphere was, to enable them or to encourage them to apply for membership here. We've had since March 22nd when we opened, was March 22nd or May 22nd? May 17th, I'm sorry, when we reopened after COVID. Some 195 new applications for membership here, some of which have been confirmed via the various committee meetings and some are pending. I'm looking at them now. In previous years, we would have had 2, maybe 3 applications for membership. So I think it's important to state that it's always been our goal or business plan then to keep these premises as a private members club, so that we can police the age of the people that come here, the demographic of the people that come here, and if for argument's sake somebody misbehaves, we can ask them to leave and rescind their membership and police it in that way. Whilst that particular initial project was going on, we had, I believe, an anonymous complaint made by a member that we were admitting non-members, and those non-members were misbehaving. So we were advised by a member of the licensing committee that we had to adhere to the premises license that was currently in place and make sure that we had a guest signing in book here for everybody who visited the premises who weren't members. And in the meantime, it was suggested that if we wanted to encourage, for the time being, if we wanted to encourage more non-members here so that they could eventually become members or hopefully become members, then we would need to apply for a licensed premises license. So that's essentially where we are right now.
Right, thank you. Anything else to say on that slogan?
Not on the actual application. I mean, obviously, I'm hoping that we'll get time. Is it now the time? Excuse me for if I misunderstand. Is now the time to talk about the representations that have been made regarding noise, etc.? Would you like me to do that now?
Yeah, we'll come back to them, I think. But you've had advice from our officers regarding the running of the premises, and you've established that. Fine, thank you. Any questions from our officers, please, or on the presentation so far, or do you want to go to the first objector, Mr. Perks?
I think, Chair, sorry, if I think, you know, Mr. Logan can say how he's going to sort of run the premises itself. I mean, this is the opportunity before Mr. Perks actually sort of says his objections. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Logan would have been advised with regards to the actual club premises certificate and the restrictions that has with regards to sort of allowing non-members into the venue. So that's why the officers would have actually gone to Mr. Logan with that advice, hence the reason why a premises license is being applied for as opposed to retaining the club premises certificate. But yeah, Mr. Logan, you can sort of say how your premises is going to be managed, and obviously with regards to the nuisance element, how are you going to prevent the noise nuisance? So under the 4 licensing objectives, you can give what your views before we go to Mr. Perks.
Okay, so the licensing, the hours that we've applied for under the licensed premises are slightly different to the hours that exist for the club premises license. I think we've all got the information on that. The vital thing from our point of view to state is that we are open from 12 midday until 11 o'clock every day of the week. Those are our opening hours. We do not have the ability, we do not have the funding, and I don't think any of us ever want to go down the route of opening at 8 o'clock in the morning for sporting events, for live music, for off sales. The only reason that the licensing hours were put in place in the first place, as far as I can see from the club minutes previously under the club license, were that members of the club were allowed to visit the club after the hours of 8 o'clock in the morning to use non-alcohol related activities in the club, such as the snooker tables. Or if the local Probus group wanted a meeting here, they were allowed to access the building earlier than when the club was open. So just to be completely clear on this, we open our doors at 12 o'clock currently, and we have absolutely no plans whatsoever to change that. And we close the doors well prior to the current licensing hours that we hold, because it tends to go a little quieter here, particularly during the week, so we save money on the staff. We want this venue to be a lot of what it always has been, which is members of the Royal Naval Association, members of local business groups, Monmouth Male Voice Choir, who were here last night, to be able to come here and enjoy the venue in exactly the same way as they always have done. Nothing has changed. Local Skittles teams here with the local farmers, and darts as well, which is in the area of the Skittle Alley also. We have a newly refurbished kitchen, which we intend to provide Sunday meals, which were previously very popular, particularly to the older generation of Monmouth. So in that aspect, absolutely nothing has changed. However, I would state once again that if we had spent the money on the club that we had spent and just reopened the doors and kept it as per the previous regime, then it wouldn't be still open now under a club license or under a licensed premises, because the footfall just didn't keep the place open. We have a steward and a stewardess here who's employed by the club. She's actually sat next to me. She's also the license holder. She lives upstairs, so her livelihood also depends on the correct running of the club. So to those ends, I don't believe, and I'm very confident that Anna will not allow any kind of misbehaviour here, which would be detrimental to her living quarters and indeed her employment. As regards, if we probably need to touch on the noise element. So we have a beer garden here, and we've always had a beer garden here. And it was, I think it was stated earlier on in this meeting that it's recently opened beer garden. It's not. It's actually been here for as long as the club has been here. The fact that it's maybe a little noisier and a little busier during the summer months is because we've actually made a good job of refurbishing the beer garden and making it a nice place for people to come sit outside and drink. So the beer garden's always been there, and I think the essence of the objections are purely because previously hardly anybody visited these premises, but now, fortunately for us, a great deal more people do visit the premises.
Thank you. Mr. Ben Davis wants to say something. His hand is up.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify just an earlier point that Mr. Logan made about the private member element of the club with the non-member element of the club. I think, Mr. Logan, you stated that you're looking to encourage non-members to attend the club with the hope that they will become members. What would are you still operating a private members element to the premises, or would that fall away?
Yes, indeed we are. Indeed we are. We'll have
So,
sorry.
sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry, Mr. Logan. I just wanted to know how the private members element works with the non-members, and just sort of clarity around that, if possible, please.
Okay, so if you're a member, you get obviously a membership card, which entitles you to a discount on alcohol and soft drinks and anything else. It also entitles you to the use of club equipment such as snooker tables, such as skittle alley, etc. If you're not a member and therefore you're a guest, you have to be signed in as before by a present member. So a member has to be in the club and say, I'm happy to sign that person in. So we have a log of who visited when, who signed them in. So essentially they're responsible for that. And
will that operate in the same way if the license were granted today? Would there'd still be membership, but if you were a non-member, you'd need sort of an affiliation to a current member to come in? Yes, you would. Essentially what you wouldn't need to do if you were under a licensed premises license, you could visit the club as a guest, but you obviously wouldn't be able to enjoy the same facilities within the club as a member does. That is the element that we're hoping to encourage people who visit the club to say, I'd like to be part of that because one, the wines and spirits are less expensive. Two, I can use the rest of the facilities, which means I can use the snooker tables, the skittle alley, and so on. So it's to encourage sort of people to walk off the street, see if they like the look of the place and the atmosphere and so on, and to encourage them to become members. Absolutely, and once everybody's happy that we have maybe, and we probably never have enough, but a safe number of members to keep the business going, we could then explore the opportunity of going back to a private club license and not admitting non-members at all, other than for maybe private parties or something like that. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Council Officer Linda Gorman wants to say something. Linda? Yeah,
just Chair, just to clarify the position with regards to a club premises certificate as opposed to a premises license, really. With a club premises certificate, a person may not be admitted to membership or admitted as a candidate for a membership to any membership privileges without an interval of 2 days being granted the nomination of the application and membership. Club rules must state that those becoming members without nomination or application cannot access members' privileges, that the club is established in good faith and the club has at least 25 members, that alcohol is only supplied to members on the premises by or on behalf of the club. So that's a club premises certificate. And what will means once it actually goes to a premises license, that isn't a requirement, albeit they can still manage it how they feel fit to manage a premises certificate, which Mr. Logan has stated they are going to continue with a sort of element of a membership, and that's entirely in their own right who they allow access to. But I just wanted to clarify what the club premise certificate is and that's the element of a club premise certificate, which is not required under a premises license. The difference as well with the premises license is that you have to have a designated premises supervisor, which is ultimately in charge of alcohol sales. So with this application, you've got the club being a recognised club applying for the premises license, and then you'll have a designated premises supervisor. If that designated premises supervisor suddenly up and leave, then obviously their alcohol would need to cease until they got a new designated premises supervisor in. So that's the difference, whereas a club wouldn't require a designated premises supervisor. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify the point of law really on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as regards the noise element, we, because I alluded to it with the beer garden, we do everything we can, both internally and externally, to ensure that our neighbours are not inconvenienced in any way by excess noise, swearing in the beer garden area. It's very difficult, as you will appreciate, to police that during all of the opening hours, 12 till 11. Our bar staff and indeed our designated supervisor or license holder are fully aware through staff training they need to visit, particularly if we have a warm sunny day, that they need to visit the beer garden as regularly as they possibly can, not just to ensure that the place is clean and tidy, but ensure that the noise level is kept down. Now, unfortunately, life means that sometimes if you add alcohol to anybody, they become louder. And as I've explained to several people here, I don't particularly like loud noise when I'm trying to enjoy myself and maybe watch a bit of TV or just have a quiet drink with somebody. But it seems to be a fact of life that wherever you go, and groups of people will gather, there will always be one or two noisy ones there. We've taken the advice of both the police and the HSE, and we've installed an additional CCTV camera specifically in the beer garden area to do two things. One is to obviously police any kind of activity that shouldn't be going on, such as excess alcohol or drugs, whatever. But it also has the ability to be able to record sound. And in my conversations with the HSE, they thought that was a very good idea. That if the noise became excessive and somebody subsequently complained, then we could either verify that, or we could back that up with the CCTV footage which had the sound levels on it as well. So we've gone to the expense of actually installing that camera in the beer garden area. We also have signs in the beer garden area stating our zero tolerance to any kind of drugs. We also have signs in the beer garden area which asks the members and visitors to be mindful of our neighbours and please keep the noise levels down wherever they can. And also we have signs on the main exit of the building which ask people to leave the premises quietly.
Is that all you want to say, Mr. Logan?
I'm sorry?
You said about the last bit I call, because I'm where I am, is you would put out notices that people would need to exit quietly. Was that the last piece you said?
Yes, it was. Sorry, I had bad network quality here, so some of that may have broken up. So yeah, there's a sign on the main exit or the only exit at the front which asks people to leave the premises quietly and be mindful of the neighbours.
Okay, thank you. Linda, do you want to?
Chair, do members want to ask any questions to the applicant, and obviously we give the opportunity for the objector then to give their views and their concerns, and then likewise you can ask questions of them. then the summing up then will be from the objector again. If you wanted to add any further points, the applicant is able to come back with anything as well. So if you want to ask any questions, the members, to the applicant, and then we'll hand over to the objector.
Yeah, I think we go to the objector now. Oh, Richard, do you want to, Councillor Rhoden, do you want to say something before we do?
Well, actually, I'll wait until after Mr. Perks has spoken. I think that might be the easiest thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perks.
Thank you very much. I'd like to begin in general by saying I'm most grateful to the staff of the Licensing Committee who've been courteous and helpful at every point. And I'm also glad to say that I've been able to have useful discussions with Stuart Logan in a friendly and civilised spirit. I've lived in Whitecross House, which adjoins the Conservative Club, since 1982. We've had small ups and downs, but I'm glad to say that I think the officers of the club over those years would agree we've always tried to be good neighbours. Now, I needn't repeat the points that have been made to you, but I well understand the financial position that the Conservative Club was in, and I understand and value and appreciate the steps that have been taken to improve the premises and to turn this into a useful place where people can go and get a comfortable drink. And I've no objection to that whatsoever. And I also fully accept the good intentions of Stuart and his committee members that this shall be a civilised place in which there is no shouting and screaming and public nuisance and the rest. Unfortunately for us all, the fact is that since the club opened and since all welcome notices went up outside, the noise in the beer garden through the summer months has been consistent, and it has caused considerable distress to neighbours in the area, particularly, I'm not authorised to speak for them, you'll notice the objections from the inhabitants of Whitecross Court, who are mainly elderly people and who have found the noise not just a nuisance, but severely distressing. Now, I think around the fact that the noise was distressing during the summer months comes the fact that people therefore take fright about the hours that are proposed in the new application, which are slightly enlarged, and all the other issues. But I think I would like to say that as far as I understand it, the majority of people would share my view, which is that it is really the noise from the beer garden late at night which has frightened us and which makes us wary of taking on trust that this will be properly policed in the future. We cannot tolerate the continuance of those levels of noise, even though we accept that it is the current committee's intention that that should be properly governed and policed. So please could I be properly understood? It's certainly not my intention to oppose this application. It's certainly not my intention nor my wife's to try and ask the committee to take steps that would then put the committee in a position where they were not able to run a viable operation. We wish them every luck, provided that we can coexist as good neighbours, not causing nuisance to one another. And to that end, I have a simple suggestion, which I hope ought to be acceptable to all parties, and that is that the beer garden doesn't have, as I understand it, a bar in it. Therefore, there are no permanent staff there. When I discussed this with Mr. Logan, I don't know, maybe this was a private discussion. I'll go back on that. It is my guess that it is quite difficult for bar staff in a busy indoor venue to know precisely what is going on in a busy beer garden outside the premises. Be that as it may, and given the problems that have occurred, which are very largely late in the evening from the beer garden, I would like to suggest that all the other aspects of the application should be accepted, but that there should be a limitation on the serving of alcohol or use of the beer garden after a round. This will be up to members to decide what is sensible. I would suggest 9:30 in the evening. That is the only thing I would like to suggest. In other respects, I am fully content, or I'm prepared, shall we say, to shelve other reservations about the application.
Before we go any further, Mr. Logan, would you like to respond to that last bit about the beer garden bit, please, so we can understand where you are with it?
Certainly. A question which kind of confuses me is that if, since we've been open since May the 17th, if the noise levels have been that bad, then why have we received not one single complaint in person from the local residents? And the only time we've received a complaint about noise levels in the beer garden is when Mr. Perks noticed that we'd applied for a licensed premises. So essentially what I'm saying is that the noise in the beer garden, if it is excessive, exists or existed under a club's premises license. The CCTV that we've installed there has allowed us to monitor both motion and sound, which the HSE are happy with. And as I explained to Mr. Perks in our recent meeting, we're reasonable people here and we too would like to coexist, but we are also a business, and in restricting the use of the beer garden as early as 9:30 in the evening will do one thing and one thing only, which will push people without drinks, obviously, because we don't allow it. It will push people who wish to smoke or just talk in general outside into Whitecross Street, which is also at the front of Mr. Park's property. So it's just moving a potential problem from one area of the club to the other. And the other area of the club, once they step over the threshold, it cannot be policed by us. It's a matter for the police. On that note, I have indicated, again, we're reasonable people, and in the interests of public harmony and good neighbouring, we would agree to a condition whereby the beer garden was closed at 10 o'clock every evening. But I have to say that I think Mr. Perks' suggestion of 9:30 is totally unacceptable, particularly in the summer months, particularly on the weekend when people just simply need to enjoy themselves and need to sit out, you know, a little bit later than they normally do. 10 o'clock we feel is a reasonable compromise. And obviously, should the noise between the time that we're open at 12 midday and 10 o'clock at night, when the beer garden would then be closed, or whenever it currently closed, if the noise does become excessive, as the HSE have stated, they're more than happy to visit, take away the CCTV audio and motion recordings, monitor it and report back accordingly. And I'm at a loss to see what else we can possibly offer, because at the moment we're talking about things that haven't yet been proven to have happened. We put in place measures that will allow us to monitor that, both with the staff and the CCTV. So we're holding ourselves kind of accountable and responsible for policing that, which we're happy to do, and we're also happy to make a concession and say we're happy to have a condition put on the license whereby the beer garden should close at 10 o'clock of an evening, which essentially, if we are licensed till 12 o'clock, that beer garden could be open till 12 o'clock, particularly in the summer. There's no need for us to do that. We don't want that kind of venue. We don't want neighbours here every 5 minutes saying, I can't sleep, I've got children, etc. As I said, we want to be able to coexist with everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Parks has got his hand up and wants to speak, but I will then go to the members. But Mr. Perks, sorry, you want to say something?
Well, yes. I mean, I don't want to be difficult, but to say that these happenings are not proven is not, I think, really quite acceptable. You have 15 applications for objections from people.
Yeah, can I stop you there, please? I mean, if I thought perhaps you maybe bring in something in, but you'll be entitled to sum up at the end of everything.
Okay,
because the members might want to ask questions as well, and indeed the officers may want to as well.
Thank you.
I go to the office. Oh, I go to Mr. Ben Davis first. Is there anything you want to query on what you've heard, Mr. Ben Davis? Or Linda?
No, thank you, Chair.
Sorry, no?
Sorry, Chair. No, thank you. Not on that point. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Chair, as well. The only thing I will say in 2.2 on the recommendations of the reports of the powers, when you come to decide the application with regards to changing of hours and conditions, just to make it clear that members, when they determine the application, they can either grant the licence with conditions specified in the application. To grant the licence with conditions the council consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities which the application relates. To refuse to specify a person in the licence as a premises supervisor, and to reject the application. So I just want to make that point clear of what powers you have when you come to determine it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Members, any questions, please? Yes. I go to Councillor Richard Rhoden first.
Thank you, Chair. Will the demographic of the attendees to the club change as a result of the change in the type of membership that you are considering? First question. Secondly, has the beer garden increased in size? So you mentioned that it had been renovated, and I noticed that somebody said about bad behaviour of non-members, and you're actually considering moving to a less of a membership-oriented club. I just wonder if that would have any impact on bad behaviour. Okay. Thank you.
Do you want those questions answered now, please? Yeah. Could you answer those queries now, please, Mr. Logan?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Indeed.
Okay. As regards the demographic, ultimately what we'd like to move towards is an over 25s members only policy. That's ultimately where we'd like to get to. At the moment, as I explained to several people, you can't exclude people until they either misbehave or give you a reason to exclude them. The beer garden hasn't changed in any way, shape or form in terms of the size of it. And sorry, your last point was on?
It was a bit, with the change in membership, where you have less control on visitors to the club, actually have any impact on bad behaviour? If you can't control who's going in there like you can now, will that cause an increase in issues, do you think?
No, we have a zero tolerance policy anyway to members and indeed guests at the moment. So we're not that busy that we can't monitor what people are doing here. And if people have misbehaved since we've been reopened, they've been asked to leave and they've been told they're not welcome any longer, whether they're members or non-members. So as stated previously, when we get to a number that we're happy with, that will give us some longevity here. We can actually revert back to a private members club and have exclusively just members.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Strong, do you have any questions, please?
Well, just a couple of things to clarify with Mr. Logan. I think you said that the present opening hours are from 12 noon until 11 o'clock at night. Okay, and you've also asked for a slight extension at night to 12:30. If the hours are not changing, why do you want to have an extra half an hour at the end?
So it was suggested that we might want to give ourselves some kind of leeway in case we have occasions on the weekend, maybe where we have a private function or we have a wedding or something like that, which needs to go on, or there is a desire for it to go on a little later.
And would the bar be kept open after 11 o'clock, that being the case?
The bar would be kept open until 11:30, if that was the case, Anna.
Yeah.
Yeah, till 11:30, with the view of everybody off the premises by midnight.
Okay. The other thing, the beer garden is closed at 10 o'clock. Is that right?
No, at the moment we have a notice and it's policed to close at 10:30.
10:30.
Yes.
Right. And at 10:30, does that mean that any alcoholic drinks are taken away and they have to come back inside?
Yes, there's a notice on the door inside and out which clearly states no alcohol to be taken outside after 10:30, and if your alcohol is outside at 10:30, it will be removed and put into the club.
Okay.
One of the conversations I had with previously with one of the licensing officers when we were making this application is how then do you police people, or what do you do with people who want to smoke?
Yeah.
And to those ends, we thought a good compromise was to remove the alcohol from them, so they would be remove the ability for them to be able to take the alcohol into that area, which means they wouldn't maybe loiter any longer than they did before. If we go for a hard close of the beer garden at whatever time of the evening, which we're again more than happy to agree to. It's certainly one more area that we don't have to worry about or police late at night, so that's fine by us. It helps with the noise pollution for our neighbours. We're more than happy to do what we call a hard close and say this area is now close to everybody. But of course, you then have to consider that whilst they're not allowed to take their alcohol out through the main entrance, because that's not allowed, they are allowed to take themselves and their smoking habits outside onto the street.
Okay. And the earlier hour opening, 8 till 10, I haven't got much or many concerns with that, but do you get many snooker players in at 8 o'clock in the morning?
We do, yeah, we do have quite a few of the elderly members who'd like to come and have coffee and go upstairs and play snooker. And of course, if we're not licensed for that and we have a problem, a fire or an accident on the premises without that licensing, then we have a bigger problem than everything else. So yeah, but I mean that was under the club rules then, if you like, or sub rules to allow them to do that. And that's one of the things we try to encourage here, so that people can use the premises whenever they want to safely. Yeah. But obviously the bar alcohol is not served until 12 o'clock.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're still on, Brian. All right, thank you. Mr. Perks, I want to come back to you. You've heard what's been said, because before I bring the officers in, and indeed the councillors might want to come back, because it's very complex. So we want to ensure that we know, how first of all, Mr. Logan has expressed what we would hope the club may be granted. You've heard what's been said so far. I open it to you to make any comment on the last, because you have said you have laid out your what your thoughts were, your concerns were, on the basis of what you just heard again, because it's going to be we might have to go back and forth a couple of times until we get clear in our own minds, us as councillors and the officers as well, as to what where you are with it. We know we've said the main things, but is there anything else you wish to say on this before? I'll ask you to sum up later, as indeed Mr. Logan.
Well, I would simply like to say that to suggest that the noise levels unproven is, I think, a little unfair. I don't want to enter into a squabble with Mr. Logan on that, but there are 15 objections, and believe me,
yeah, we know that anyway. Yeah.
So as long as there's no dispute that the noise levels have been obtrusive and caused distress, I merely want to say that, as I said before, this is not a destruction job. It's one that I simply want to see the conditions that will lead to tolerable existence for the neighbours.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that seems to me to be down to a question for the committee of what time you impose on the vehicle.
You know, I think Mr. Ben Davis wants to ask a question, I think.
Yes, Chair. Just if I may, just of Mr. Perks, if I may, it's just on the issue of the beer garden and the issue of a hard close, or potentially the opposite, a soft close. That if alcohol is removed, your position in terms of people using that area to smoke without alcohol, as Mr. Logan, I think, outlined, that would be then on their premises and with the ability of those working in the club at the time to police that, rather than if it's a hard close. I suppose that there is the knock on that would push people who wish to smoke into the street, I presume. What your view would be on that, whether a soft close, that there is no alcohol in the beer garden, but that people would be allowed to go out there to have a cigarette or whatever for that period. Just wanted to clarify your view on that, if I may, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I mean, my feeling, I think, is that on balance, I would prefer a hard close, because if there is a loud party going on in the beer garden, I think it's likely to continue as a loud party if people are allowed to stay there and smoke. I mean, we're talking about what has actually been alcohol-fueled noise, shouting, swearing, and at times screaming. Not all the time, but some of the time, and it's that causes the distress. Frankly, I feel if there was a hard close policy, yes, certainly they would have to go out onto the street, but in that process, I think the party would be broken up.
Mr. Stewart Logan, your hand is still up.
I'm sorry to keep.
Okay. Do you want to say something?
I do. Yeah. I mean,
not sum up at the moment. Say something. You know,
I do. Yes.
To clarify.
Okay. I'll save it till summing up. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Any of the officers? Yeah, you're still on, Mr. Logan. Yeah. Any of the officers wants to wish to take questions further? Mr. Richard Rhoden, Councillor Richard Rhoden. Oh, Linda Gorman. Sorry. There's hands going up there.
Yes,
Linda.
yes, I'm sorry, Jay. Yeah, just to clarify, obviously, Mr. Logan has stated when he intends to sort of serve alcohol, but just to be mindful of the application that's made and the hours that's been requested, that they are able to serve alcohol at any other times, even though they may not want to start until 12 o'clock, just to be mindful of that, sir, Jay.
Okay, thank you. Any members wish to make any comment further?
Chair, if I may.
Yes,
how would the longer opening times impact on the neighbours, if at all? Question for Mr. Logan. How would you see that, if there's any impact of longer hours?
Mr. Logan?
Yes, I don't believe that the hours that we're operating at the moment and intend to operate going forward are any different to the hours that we used to operate pre-COVID. So I'm not sure that there would be any knock-on effect, any implications, any consideration to be made regarding that.
So if there was a hard closure of the smoking area, would that put people out onto the streets later, potentially smoking outside, or not?
I believe it would. I also believe that there is and have CCTV evidence that there are noise pollutant sources in this immediate vicinity that are not related to our club. And I'll give you an example. Last Saturday, both the steward and stewardess were in bed asleep at 11 o'clock because we closed at 10:58 because the club was quiet. Saturday just gone, but we're both woken up by loud shouting and swearing and smashing of glasses of a gang of people that come from a nearby pub just around the corner. So I'm not sure if you're lying in bed at night where you can obviously differentiate between what the noise is and you know, but not where it's originated from. If there's nobody here at, for argument's sake, on a Saturday night, as just stated, at 10 to 11, then we close the place, because the more we can save on bar staff wages and lighting and everything else, the better it is for us.
And the second point is, if ownership of the club were to move to someone else with a different approach, if we altered the licensing hours, how would that impact, do you think?
The ownership of the club can't go to anybody else. The club and the premises are owned exclusively by the Association of Conservative Clubs.
Right, yeah. Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you. Yeah, you're still switched on, Councillor Rhoden. Right, thank you. I think if there's oh, Linda.
So yeah, sorry, Chair. Obviously the club has itself applied for the application here, but if it's a premises license, there would be nothing preventing it. I can see obviously what Mr. Logan is saying, that they would have to go through the club because there's a club applying for it as a recognised club, but there's nothing preventing the club as a whole transferring the license under a premises license under the Act itself.
Thank you. I think it's appropriate now for excuse me, for the objectors to, if there's no other comments, for the objector, Mr. Perks, sorry, to make your case, you know, just you know, sum up if you like, and I then go to Mr. Logan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to take up the time of the committee unnecessarily, and thank you for listening to me up to now. I hope my points were clear. Certainly none of the committee members have challenged what I've said. But I do just wish to add a tiny point that's emerged recently in the discussions, and that is one of our concerns is that whereas we don't regard the stated policies of the current management as being in bad faith, of course not. We accept they're doing their best to run a good show, but we are concerned at the possibility that things could happen in the future under the terms of the licence. And if it were to be a reversion to the discomforts that we had in the summer, that would be intolerable. The reasons, I think it's been suggested that it's odd that nobody's complained. I think that there's a good neighbour principle here. I think if it had opened earlier and the summer behaviour had gone on, complaints would have started to pour in. But as it was, you want to give them a chance.
Well, we got to take it on everything on the information we have at this moment in time, and with respect, if something occurs in the future, you know, there's always a potential for a review. But you know, we got to consider the facts as they are now, and I think that's where we are. Mr. Logan, have you finished your summing up, Mr. Perks? Yeah, Mr. Logan.
Yeah, just one thing, please. I'd just like to add that the complaints, the 14 complaints that Mr. Perks alludes to, a lot of those, a great deal of those, were solely canvassed for by Mr. Perks by running up and down the street with an urgent notice in his hand. Now, had he come to us and said,
can I say something to you, please? I want you to. Yep. I mean, this is the first time this has been mentioned, isn't it?
Sure.
Linda.
Yes, Chair, if you can interject there, obviously the complainants have made a complaint in their own right, and it's their own individual views for that, and the canvassing needs to be sort of disregarded with regards to that because they've done the objection in their own right.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Ms. Perks, as your objector, I wish you to sum up the case, please, and then Mr. Logan can sum up his case after.
Chair, I was under the impression that I had said what I needed to say and that I had summed up my case. I don't wish to repeat myself to the committee. I'm sure I've been heard, but I would like to say that I didn't go around stirring trouble up. I just went around saying to people, had they noticed that there was an application? And to that extent, I did alert people.
Oh, thank you for that. You know, you've explained that. Thank you very much. Mr. Logan, do you want to sum your case up, please? As brief as you can.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, will do. Thank you very much for all the work and effort that's gone in by the committee. I don't have anything else more to say on behalf of the club here.
Okay, thank you. The committee will now. Thanks for everything you've said. I think the committee is there are 3 members of the committee. We also got officers as well who can give us advice if and when we need it. So thanks very much for that. And if you could now switch off for a while, or and we'll come back to you at once we finish our deliberations, and if I could put it that way to you. And obviously we need to take advice off officers as well. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Logan and Mr. Perks, if you sort of remain where you are on this, just be mindful of the fact that it is being live streamed. So I would suggest putting perhaps your stuff onto mute as well, because obviously it is being sort of recorded at this moment, and the members will go and make their deliberations and come back into this meeting.
May I just say, given my domestic circumstances, I think I may leave the meeting now, if I may.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perks.
Thank you. If
thank you very much.
Solutions could be conveyed to me, I'd be most grateful for that.
Okay.
Yeah, results will be given to all objectors, Mr. Perks, of this meeting.
Yep. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you and goodbye.
You.
Thank you.
I'd like to leave the meeting then, Chair. I'll get you into the deliberations meeting.
Yeah.
Right. You've just left the meeting, have you?
Yeah, they've all left.
Yeah, so leave that.
when you're ready, Mr. Davis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Following deliberations, the committee have made the following decision. The Licensing and Regulatory Committee has to consider an application for a premises licence under the Licensing Act 2003 for the Club 15 Whitecross Street, Monmouth. Due to representations received against the licence application, the local authority are required to hold a hearing to consider the application. A copy of the application with plans provided by the applicant is attached to the officer's report at Appendix A. The background is set out in the report of Officer Taylor Watts and is attached documents. The key issues: the application for a premises licence under the Licensing Act was received from the club, which already is a recognised members club. The application in general terms and hours is set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report. The applicant states in their application that the club will operate CCTV, operate Challenge 25, be a member of Pub Watch, have a compliant fire alarm and fire risk assessment, display notices for customers to leave quietly, not have live music outdoors, not have children at the premises from 9 PM onwards. The premises currently holds a club premises certificate named Monmouth Conservative Club, authorising licensable activities at the premises. A copy of the current licence with times and permissions is attached to the officer's report at Appendix B. It is noted that the Conservative Club has retained this licence whilst applying for the new premises licence. All who attend the club are currently required to have membership, be affiliated to another club or enter as a guest of a member. The premises in design has 3 floors, a cellar and a car park. The ground floor and first floor above are only licensable areas with a mixture of bars, function rooms and snooker rooms. The premises is on Whitecross Street and is opposite St Mary's Priory Church, with residential properties on either side of the building and surrounding the car park area to the rear of the building. It is noted that the applicant has a statutory duty to send copies of the application to the responsible authorities and departments within the local authority, as set out in paragraph 3.3 and 3.4 of the officer's report. This was completed. A notice was correctly circulated in the local newspaper and a public notice was displayed at the premises to enable businesses and residents to make representations. The application was also advertised on the council's website. No representations were received from responsible authorities other than from Gwent Police, who requested the applicant agree to accept alternative licence conditions. The applicant has agreed to accept the conditions as set out in detail at paragraph 3.5 of the report. As a result of the agreement with the applicant, Gwent Police removed their representations. The committee consider this is a comprehensive list of conditions. Representations from 14 local residents objecting to the licence were received by the licensing section, and they are appended at Appendix C of the report. The main concerns are summarised as follows: noise pollution from recorded live music, the late night hours applied for alcohol and music, noise from customers leaving the premises late at night, noise from the beer garden recently introduced at the premises already causing a disturbance, albeit that has been clarified by the applicant today that the beer garden has always been in situ. Poor soundproofing from listed buildings with singular pane glass, concerns sorry, did I dip out then? I think my screen.
You're on screen, you're okay.
Sorry about that. Poor surround soundproofing from listed buildings with singular pane glass, concerns from elderly residents, concerns over potential antisocial behaviour and transport to and from the venue. The committee has considered the satellite view of the local area with the location, the objectives marked in blue in comparison with the premises marked in green. This is attached to the officer's report at Appendix D. The committee have paid particular attention to the nature of these objections, the location of residents, and looked at the conditions to be placed upon the licence and how these concerns can be addressed. It is noted by the committee that due to some of the representations referencing house pricing and car parking issues, which are not relevant for licensing applications, the licensing section sent a letter to all persons who made representations to clarify the licensing objections, and this is found in Appendix E. It is further noted that representations made under the Licensing Act must be made under the 4 key licensing objectives: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, and the prevention of public nuisance and protection of children from harm. The committee are aware that when making their decision, they must review the licensing objectives, in particular sections 2.1 to 221 of the Home Office revised guidance under section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. Attached at Appendix F. The committee have given particular consideration to those paragraphs, particularly 2.1 to 2.21. A section of the A section of the Licensing Act guidance regarding responsible authorities states at section 9.11, responsible authorities under the Act are automatically notified of all applications. It is the responsibility of each responsible authority to determine when they have appropriate grounds to make those objections. At section 9.12, each responsible authority will be an expert in their respective field, and in some cases it is likely that a particular responsible authority will be the licensing authority's main source of advice in relation to particular licensing objectives. It is recognised that the police have a key role in managing the nighttime economy and should have a good working relationship with those operating in their area. The police should usually therefore be the licensing authority's main source of advice on matters relating to the promotion of crime and disorder, the promotion of the crime and disorder licensing objective. In this case, the police have requested the applicant agree to accept alternative conditions, which were accepted, and the police removed their representation. Despite not submitting formal representations, the Environmental Health Section, who monitor and investigate noise nuisance, have received notification of the representations from local residents, many outlining noise nuisance through their objections. The Environmental Health have commented, and that is contained within the report. The licensing officer has written to residents informing them of the conditions accepted by the applicant following police comments. Residents have also received notification of the applicant's intention for the application to run a similar premises to the existing Monmouth Conservative Club without the requirement to sign and non-sign members as guests. However, only 2 representations have been withdrawn by local residents, therefore the hearing was required today. The determination of the application is to be considered in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003. In section 9.4 of the guidance issued under 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, the Secretary of State recommends that a representation would only be relevant if it relates to the likely effect of the grant of a licence on the promotion of at least one of the licensing objectives, as mentioned previously. Monmouthshire County Council's policy sets out its views on the prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance and public safety. The committee has considered the relevant sections 10 to 12.7 of that policy. These are attached to Appendix F. The committee has considered the report of Licensing Officer Taylor Watts and the representations made at today's meeting. The committee have been able to ask the questions they have considered to be relevant to this decision. The committee have considered the information provided by the applicant within the report and noted the representation from the applicant at today's meeting. The committee have paid careful attention to the issues raised by those objecting to the application and the concerns that have been raised. The committee have been able to ask the questions they felt relevant in order to make a decision. In reaching its decision, the committee have had regard to the following key issues. The licensing authority's duty under the Act to carry out its functions with a view to promoting the licensing objectives. The licensing objectives relevant in this particular application are the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety. The committee note the objections made by residents and take these very seriously, in particular noise nuisance from the beer garden. The committee note the position of both the police and environmental health, who specialise in these particular areas of concern. The committee note the conditions to be placed upon the licence and that CCTV with sound in the beer garden will be placed there together with signage. In taking into account all the relevant matters, relevant legislation, guidance and the relevant circumstances of this application, the committee have decided to grant the licence with the following conditions: that licensable activities should only be between the hours of 8 and 12 p.m, reduced from 12:30, and the premises is to shut at 12:30, and the beer garden is to be subject to a hard closure at 10 p.m. There is a right of appeal against this decision within 21 days of being notified of the decision. The applicant will receive written confirmation of this decision within 5 working days. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Logan, you heard all that?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. You will be, as Mr. Davis said, you will be notified in writing within a very short space of time, and Mr. Davis also explained to you, what you can do if you have a problem with what information you are provided with. So thank you very much. Mm-hmm. It's been an extensive session, if I put it that way. That's the very nature of it. But we've made the decision. You've been informed of the decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Okay, Ben?
I think so, Councillor Higginson.
Yes, thanks very much.